What would you do if you noticed someone who might need help, but you were running out of time for something crucial? Olivia, a 25-year-old recent university graduate, was navigating the overwhelming challenges of adulthood. With her golden blonde hair, striking blue eyes, and a warm smile, Olivia's positivity stood in stark contrast to the hardships she faced. Coming from a modest family that had sacrificed so much to send her to university in a bustling city, Olivia felt a deep sense of responsibility to repay their efforts by landing a good job. Despite her stellar academic record, the job market was far from welcoming. Most interviews ended in disappointment, internships that didn't pay or entry-level positions offering meager salaries in exchange for experience. To make ends meet, Olivia worked part-time as a cashier, barely managing to cover her rent while still dreaming of finding the career that would let her truly support her family. It was a snowy winter morning when Olivia stood at the bus stop, her breath visible in the icy air. Across the street, her eyes caught sight of an elderly woman sitting on a bench. She was well-dressed in a brown coat and held a small matching suitcase. Her white hair framed a weary yet elegant face. The woman seemed out of place, her motionless figure radiating an air of solitude as the city bustled around her. Olivia watched for a moment, her thoughts drifting to who the woman might be and why she sat there alone on such a freezing day. Before she could consider approaching, her bus arrived, pulling her back to reality. She boarded, her focus shifting to the long hours ahead at her part-time job. By the time her shift ended, Olivia was mentally exhausted but determined. She had another job interview to prepare for, a real opportunity to change her life. As the bus neared her stop, her mind raced with thoughts about how she would present herself and answer questions. But as she stepped off, she froze in her tracks. The elderly woman was still there. She sat in the exact same spot, clutching the small suitcase as if it were a lifeline. Her breath still lingered in the cold air, visible even from across the street. Olivia glanced at her watch. There wasn't a moment to spare if she wanted to prepare and make it to her interview on time. The decision gnawed at her. Should she cross the street and check on the woman, risking her own future for a stranger she didn't even know? Or should she push aside the unease in her heart and head home, hoping someone else would step in? The clock was ticking and Olivia was torn. What would she do? Olivia hesitated for only a moment before making her decision. She crossed the street quickly and approached the elderly woman with a gentle smile. "Hello," Olivia said softly. The woman turned her head slowly, her movements stiff and sluggish, a clear sign that the cold was taking its toll. "Yes," she replied, her voice trembling from both the chill and her age. "I noticed you've been sitting here since this morning," Olivia said kindly. "Are you okay?" The woman paused as if gathering her thoughts. "Oh yes. I'm fine," she said slowly. "I'm waiting for my son. He said he'd pick me up here but he hasn't come yet." Olivia felt her heart sink. Something was clearly amiss. "Do you have your phone with you?" she asked gently. The woman nodded and opened her small bag, pulling out a phone. Olivia immediately noticed that it was out of battery. The poor woman seemed confused, and Olivia suspected that her family might already be searching for her. She knew she had to help. "You're going to freeze out here," Olivia said, crouching down to meet the woman's gaze. "We need to call your son, there might have been some sort of mix-up." The woman looked at Olivia with a blank expression, her mind struggling to piece things together. Olivia realized she'd need to take charge. "Let me help you," Olivia said kindly, extending her hand. Slowly, she helped the woman to her feet and guided her to a nearby cafe. The moment they stepped inside, warmth enveloped them, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. Olivia led the woman to a table by the window and helped her remove her coat before seating her near the radiator. "Let me grab us something warm," Olivia said. She ordered 2 hot chocolates at the counter and showed the elderly woman's phone to the cafe worker. "Do you have a charger for this?" Olivia asked. The worker inspected the phone for a moment and nodded. "Yes, I'll plug it in here. You can grab it when it's ready." "Thank you," Olivia said with a grateful smile before returning to the table. The woman sat quietly, gazing out the window at the snow falling gently outside. Olivia placed a warm drink in front of her and asked softly, "How are you feeling now?" The woman smiled faintly, a hint of relief crossing her face. "Better, thank you," she said. "I think." My mind got a little muddled again. Olivia tilted her head in curiosity. "It happens sometimes," the woman explained, her voice tinged with resignation. "Old age, I suppose. My thoughts get jumbled and I don't know what's happening. All I want is to see my son," she said, her voice breaking slightly, the sadness in her tone impossible to miss. Olivia felt a pang in her chest. She knew she couldn't leave this woman alone to fend for herself. Olivia watched the elderly woman sipping her hot chocolate, lost in thought about life. People often forgot that one day they would grow old and eventually pass away. It was important to cherish every moment and appreciate loved ones. That day, Olivia realized she hadn't called her parents. "I need to remember to do this more often," she told herself. Life was something that sometimes required a moment of reflection, she thought. As time rushed by in its usual flurry, she reminded herself not to forget those she cared about. She glanced at the elderly woman and felt a pang of sadness. This poor lady had likely been waiting for her son in the freezing cold for hours. Maybe she had gone to the wrong meeting spot, or perhaps she had mixed up the days. Who knows? Olivia thought to herself. But she couldn't shake the thought of how lonely and confused the woman must have felt. Looking at her watch, Olivia realized she should have been on her way to the job interview by now. But instead of feeling stressed or upset, she whispered to herself, "I guess this was meant to be," and decided not to dwell on it. She walked over to the counter to pick up the woman's now charged phone. Returning to the table, Olivia smiled warmly at the woman. "Let's call your son now," she said. The elderly woman smiled back, nodding gently. Olivia scrolled through the recent calls and quickly found a number labeled "Son." Without hesitation, she dialed. The phone rang and a man answered anxiously, "Mom?" If you're enjoying Olivia's inspiring journey, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more uplifting stories like this one. Olivia calmly replied, "Hello, your mother is safe. I found her at a bus stop, and her phone had run out of charge. She said she was waiting for you. We're currently at a cafe on 317th Street, and she's doing well." The man on the other end let out a relieved sigh. "Oh, thank you so much. I was supposed to pick her up from her house, but we've been searching for her all morning. I'll be there right away. Please don't leave." "Of course," Olivia said before hanging up. She turned to the elderly woman and said, "Your son will be here soon. But he said he was supposed to pick you up from home. Why were you at the bus stop?" The woman's eyes widened in surprise. "Oh really? I thought..." She trailed off, falling silent. After a moment, she added softly, "My house is far away." Curious, Olivia asked gently, "How did you get here?" The woman replied, "By train." Her story was puzzling, but Olivia didn't want to press her too much. She simply smiled and stayed by the woman's side. After a little while, the cafe door opened and a tall, handsome man walked in. The elderly woman's face lit up as she exclaimed, "My son." She stood up, her movements a bit unsteady, and embraced him. The man turned to Olivia, extending his hand. "Hi, I'm Chris. Thank you so much for taking care of my mom," he said sincerely. Olivia introduced herself, shaking his hand and smiling warmly. Chris expressed his gratitude repeatedly. When his mother excused herself to use the restroom, Chris took a moment to explain the situation. "My mom hasn't been doing well lately," he admitted with a sigh. "She used to take the train here and I'd pick her up from this spot. But we haven't done that in years because she gets confused. I've been driving to her place to bring her here myself. She must have gotten mixed up and come here on her own." Olivia nodded, understanding his concern. "I see," she said softly. Chris looked at her, his gratitude evident. "Thank you again for everything. I really don't know what we would have done without you." After a pause, he asked hesitantly, "By the way, what do you do? I hope this didn't interfere with something important." "Oh no, don't worry about it," Olivia replied, smiling. Chris shook his head in disbelief. "Not everyone would have done what you did," he said. Just as he finished speaking, his phone buzzed. "Excuse me," he said, answering the call. "Yes, I know. Please inform them that the meeting has been rescheduled," he said before hanging up. A moment later, Olivia's phone rang. She answered it to hear a woman's voice informing her that her job interview had been postponed. Olivia blinked in surprise. Was this just a coincidence or could it mean something more? Turning to Chris, she asked, "Were you supposed to have a meeting today?" Then, almost as if connecting the dots, she added, "I just got a call saying my interview was postponed, and you just mentioned rescheduling something." Chris's eyes widened in realization. "Wait, you're Olivia Barnes?" he asked, pulling out his phone to double-check a list. Olivia chuckled nervously. "Yes," she replied. Chris laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. "You didn't mention anything about this being a prestigious company interview. I thought it was just a routine meeting." What a coincidence. Both of them were equally surprised and amused by the unexpected connection. A moment later, the elderly woman returned to the table, breaking the moment. Before leaving, Chris handed Olivia his business card. "Please call me this evening," he said with a smile. That evening, Olivia called Chris, and he invited her to his office the next day. When she arrived, Chris greeted her warmly. "Someone as kind-hearted and capable as you is exactly what we need," he said, gesturing to the documents on his desk, her CV and academic transcripts. "The position is yours," he added confidently. "And I feel great about this decision." Overwhelmed with excitement, Olivia could hardly contain her gratitude. Chris explained that the job came with several benefits, including accommodation in a company-owned apartment for certain employees. Olivia couldn't believe her luck. Sometimes life had a funny way of working things out. As Olivia left Chris's office, she couldn't help but feel that everything had fallen into place in the most unexpected yet perfect way. After landing her dream job, Olivia's life began to transform in ways she could never have imagined. The company apartment became her sanctuary, a small but cozy space overlooking the city skyline, a view she often admired with a cup of tea in hand. For the first time in years, Olivia felt a sense of stability and hope. Her days were busy but fulfilling. At work, her kindness and work ethic quickly earned her the respect of her colleagues. Chris, her boss, remained a supportive figure in her life, checking in occasionally to see how she was settling in. Their bond grew stronger, not just professionally but as friends, as Chris admired Olivia's resilience and determination. But Olivia's transformation wasn't just about work. One quiet evening, as she unpacked the last of her boxes, she found a small photo of her family tucked away in a book. It was an old, slightly faded picture of her parents, smiling on a warm summer day. Olivia sat on the edge of her bed, clutching the frame, and felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She realized how much she had been pushing herself to succeed, not just for herself, but for the sacrifices her parents had made for her. It struck her that while she had been so focused on making them proud, she hadn't taken enough time to express her gratitude or simply share her life with them. The next day, she called her parents. Her mother's voice cracked with emotion when Olivia told her about the new job and the apartment. "We're so proud of you," her father said. "But you don't have to carry the weight of everything alone. You've always been enough, Olivia." Those words stayed with her. Olivia made it a point to call her parents every week, sending them little care packages with handwritten notes and small gifts, a way to bridge the distance and show her love. At work, she flourished. Chris noticed her potential and began involving her in bigger projects, trusting her with responsibilities she never thought she'd be ready for. Olivia's confidence grew as she tackled challenges and learned from each experience. One day, Chris invited her to lead a major client meeting, a moment that felt like a culmination of everything she had worked for. But Olivia never forgot the lesson she learned on that snowy day with the elderly woman. She began volunteering at a local shelter, dedicating her weekends to helping those in need. It was there, amidst the warmth of shared meals and conversations, that Olivia felt her heart heal in ways she didn't even know it needed. One afternoon, as she was leaving the shelter, she saw a familiar figure walking toward her. It was Chris holding a bag of groceries. "I heard you've been volunteering here," he said, his expression soft. "I thought I'd join you today." Olivia smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. In Chris, she found not just a mentor but a true friend, someone who understood the importance of giving back and cherishing the connections that make life meaningful. Years later, as Olivia looked back on her journey, she realized how every challenge and twist of fate had brought her to this moment. Her life was far from perfect, but it was rich with purpose, love, and gratitude. She had become the woman she always hoped to be, not just successful in her career, but someone who made a difference in the lives of others. And as she watched the city lights flicker from her window, she thought back to that snowy day and whispered to herself, "Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can lead to the biggest changes." Did Olivia's story touch your heart? Make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next story.